Hey C3 family, welcome to day 28 of NovemberFast. Today our prayer topic is when your world won't budge. So let's dive in. Again, there are basically two reasons to pray. First, we pray to spend time with God. And second, we pray to establish God's will on earth. And it's important that our prayer time has a good balance of both. Now, praying effectively to establish God's will on earth is a form of prayer that can take a while to become effective at. There's going to be some times when your prayer requests will immediately submit to your declaration of the will of God, but there will also be some times when this world will resist. No, it's actually going to refuse your demands over and over and over to heed to the will of God. In Luke chapter 18, Jesus taught the disciples a parable about prayer in order to give them a simple lesson that was critical. And in his own words there, the entire purpose was to the effect that they would always pray and not lose heart. He knew that even the disciples would experience issues where God's will would be clear, but life's circumstances simply would not yield. What should they do in that event? Jesus wanted them to know to continue fighting in prayer. You know, it hadn't rained in Samaria for 3.5 years, but in 1 Kings chapter 18, Elijah knew it was God's time for that spiritual and physical drought to come to an end. So Elijah prayed for rain. And when he finished, he sent his servant up to the mountaintop to look for clouds. His servant returned and let the great prophet know that there was not a single speck of evidence that rain was on its way. So Elijah prayed a second time, even more fervently. And when he was done, he sent his servant on the same journey back up the mountain. Understand, the area of Samaria is nothing but mountains. This was no small hill, no small trek. But the servant agreed, and he returned the second time, again with the same bad news. Elijah was unfazed. He knew the will of God, and he refused to allow the answer of his circumstances to deter his prayer request. The dance went on 7 times. And the 7th exhausting time, the servant made his way up the hill, but this time he returned with a small token of hope, the news of a barely noticeable shift in the weather pattern. 1 Kings 18:44, the servant reported, "Behold, a little cloud like a man's hand is rising up from the sea." A little cloud like a man's hand. Now most would respond, "What good is that?" But Elijah knew it was the first sign of the torrential downpour that was on its way. Elijah's unrelenting declaration to the skies above established God's will that existed in heaven, now on the earth below. No doubt you have a few requests that have been a long time in a holding pattern. You know what God's will is, but you've yet to see it established. It could be that you rarely even pray over it these days because you've thought to yourself, what's the use? It seems like a lost hope, a lost dream. But deep down in, you know it's meant to be. So today's activity is to take a red marker and treat that unanswered prayer request or two as hostile towards God. Circle it. Call it out. It's time to re-engage, to lean back in and demand its alignment with the Lord's will. It may take a few days or a few weeks to respond, but it's critical that you pray and not give up. Be a man of prayer like Elijah. See the will of God established here on the earth. Listen to the words of Jesus to the disciples. We are to pray without giving up. Now after that, we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 28. And when you're all done, don't forget to leave a comment here on our blog, or even easier, on today's social media post. So let's dive in, let's take some ground, and have another fantastic day.